Hello, everybody. Welcome to the End Zone Scoop podcast. I'm your host this week because we kind of rotate hosts, right? Like it's never the same person twice. You're never going to get the same three people twice. Like that seems to be kind of a thing lately. Welcome to the End Zone Scoop. I am Dana O'Gorman, Dana OG on Twitter. Joining me as she normally does. It's good for when she's on vacation. Liz, did you see how much grief we gave you on the podcast about being in Greece?
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah, we're like, she's on a beach. She doesn't have time for us anymore. Isn't that fun? But we were very excited for you. So, yes, it was super fun. But I'm glad you had a nice vacation. Got away for a little bit. That is wonderful. And then joining us this week, because Shona is busy. Every week, one of us is busy. Joining us this week is Brian from 99 Yards. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure. Long time listening to this caller, as they say. So,
we need a bell to ding like they do on NFL on Sirius. That would be super fun. Well, this week, we're going to talk a little bit about the have and the have-nots, really, because that's what this whole podcast is kind of about, right? Like we're going to talk about the teams that are 1 and 2 and which ones are surprising and which ones aren't. We're going to talk about the winless teams. And to be honest with you, looking at that list, no one is surprised at that list. And then we're going to talk about the 3-0 teams and which ones really are 3-0 and ones are like, holy crap, they're 3-0. Like we're going to have like two different thought processes on that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Matt Stafford and Jared Goff and their swapping of places and actually what that says about them, but what it says more about the team. So we're going to get to that. But let's go ahead and start first with the teams that are 1 and 2. Now, I want to put a little asterisk caveat here. We get it's only week 3. I don't want a bunch of comments of people going, it's only week 3. You people need to calm down. I get it. Okay, we understand that. But still, we need to talk about this because there aren't many teams that can come back from a bad start in a season. So let's look at those 1 and 2 teams. We have the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Steelers, the Texans, Washington football team, Eagles, Seahawks, Bears, Vikings, Falcons. It's a long list.
Yep.
But there is one team on here that's missing that I think is probably the most surprising, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. No one expected the 2-time Super Bowl, 1-time Super Bowl champion, 2-time Super Bowl going Chiefs to be in the situation that they are. Now, I think I have a little bit of a different perspective on this than others, but I want to ask you guys, what are you making? Brian, let's start with you. What are you making of the Kansas City Chiefs having the start that they've had?
It is a shock because, like you say, they've been, one of the best teams consistently for the last couple of years. But I sort of think, like you say, it's early days. Just look at the teams they've lost to, the Ravens, the Chargers, and they were both pretty close games. And then they beat the Browns week 1, and the Browns, they look pretty good so far. So it is hard to tell. Looking at it, I just think they've given up too many points. They've given up joint most points in the league. As I say, it's partly because they've played good teams, but at some point you need to clamp down. And Patrick Mahomes is great. He's probably the best at the moment, or one of. But you've got to give him a chance. You've got to stop the other team scoring at some point.
And that's where a lot of the media really seems focused is on the defense. But Liz, last week, the defense didn't turn the ball over 4 times. Patrick Mahomes did.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think it's one of those things. It's a team that, exactly like Brian said, has always been very consistent, but something just isn't quite working there at the moment. I'm not necessarily sure what's suddenly, I guess, fallen. But I think you said this a couple of weeks ago. I think you said something along the lines of a team never makes it for a 3rd time in a row or something. I can't remember what you said about the Chiefs, but yeah. So it is starting to prove that point.
And that is exactly my point. So we had talked about, I think it was when we were talking about who we thought was going to do well this year and that sort of thing. Yeah. I think there's only one team in the history of the NFL that has gone to the Super Bowl 3 times in a row. We know there's only one team that's gone 4 times for sure. So, but I think the Bills are also the only team that have gone 3 times in a row. And I think that is because of what going to the postseason does to a team. There are Patriots fans, Seahawks fans, Dallas fans, Denver fans. There's quite a few fans that understand when their team goes twice, when they go back to back, those elongated seasons do take a toll on a team. Now, we always think, oh, they have this time off in between. Well, they don't really, right? Like, they're athletes. They're working all the time. But it does wear out a team. But what it also does is give the rest of the league a couple of years to catch up. And I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing right now, is that teams are starting to understand Patrick Mahomes and his talents. I mean, we all know how great he is, but at the same time, he has some tendencies. All quarterbacks do. They do certain things over and over all the time. And I get the feeling with the Chiefs that the league is catching up a little bit, and their defense hasn't been good enough to slow down the other team. And those two together, they happen to have, a disastrous effect. One more thing on the Chiefs before we move on to some of the other teams. The Kansas City Chiefs had to revamp their offensive line, right? We knew that they had a lot of troubles with that last year. So what do? They put a bunch of rookies in there. Brian, what do you think that has done to Patrick Mahomes' timing? And could that, somehow be responsible for those turnovers that he had this last week?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's so hard. It's almost, if you have a good offensive line, you can almost stick anyone there. If you can stick Patrick Mahomes there, that's, what a bonus. So that's been part of the reason he's been great for so many years. So, I haven't watched their games in too much detail, so it's hard to say if that's had a massive effect. But because they're still putting up points, so it's difficult to tell. But with any change in any offensive line, I think they made 3 or 4. It's bound to take time for them to gel. So, how big that factor that's been, I don't know. One thing that I think also worth mentioning: the two teams that they've lost to, the Ravens and the Chargers, they seem to be playing every year. So if you talk about teams that will maybe be able to figure them out, it's probably going to be them. And again, obviously the Raiders and the Broncos in their division, they've played them pretty close for the last couple of years. So whether you can catch up to Patrick Mahomes, I'm not sure, but they certainly don't seem that far off anymore.
It is true. And their division is really, I always say the NFC West is the best division in football, but the AFC West is catching up, and they're catching up quickly, and they're starting to even that out just a little bit. So our friend Chris Lawton, who always watches our show, and we appreciate him so much, he put in the comments, he said, even Montana Rice and the great 49ers couldn't three-peat. And that's just the truth. It's just the way that it is. It's really hard to do. Let's look at some of these other teams. I think probably the other very surprising one is probably the Seattle Seahawks. Surprising to some people, not necessarily surprising to others. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think the Chiefs and the Seahawks are the two teams on this list that I'm least worried about. Are either one of you guys worried about either one of those teams, like kind of snapping back from it? Liz, let's start with you.
So, seeing Seahawks on that list is a shock for me. And the only reason why that is because I was so excited about how good the NFC West was going to be this season. Didn't even think that we would be the bottom of the division or having a record we would have or any struggles or anything like that. That, for some reason, has, shocked and surprised me. But there is really tough competition. So, I don't know. I'm not necessarily looking at it as that we're really bad, because I don't necessarily think it's that. I think, yes, we do have our struggles, but I do think we can come around. Like with anything, we've had these similar problems before, so and I don't know what needs to change, but it's almost like Russell's a bit of a one-man team kind of at the moment.
Understood. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he just seems to be able to consistently pull rabbits out of the hat year on year, doesn't he? And he's another one. It's like, are people going to catch up? And I certainly don't think they have. But it's, they seem to have struggled, and they can always seem to put points on the board. But again, I guess similar to the Chiefs, they just can't seem to slow teams down at times, and that's really hurt them. And looking at the schedule, they've got the 49ers and the Rams coming up. They're difficult games, other NFC West team. So I don't know. I'm certainly not going to rule them out at this point, but they may struggle as we move forward. Yeah,
I agree with you. I'm a little more worried about Seattle than I am about the Chiefs, just because of the schedule that they have to play. But I'm not panicked, just simply because Seattle was traditionally a very slow start team for a long time. And I think people forgot that last year when they did the whole let Russ cook and they started to, they went 5-0 and they weren't, having the struggles that they seem to be now. But this defense started exactly this way last year. And so it was interesting that, once again, there's defensive problems, and that seems to be the majority. Russ is still putting up great numbers when he's allowed to get on the field. We have to remember, he was only on the field like twice in the second half of the Vikings game. And so in the second half. And so that's a problem. But there's obviously mechanical issues there that they need to work through. And so hopefully they'll figure that one out. The rest of this list doesn't look so chipper. I'm not going to lie. The Patriots, I think a lot of people had some good hope for the Patriots coming in with the new quarterback. Mac seemed to be the perfect fit up in New England, but they're really struggling now. And they have to face Tom Brady next week. That poor kid, all that drama. I feel for him so badly. The Steelers, the Texans, Washington, the rest of these aren't quite so surprising, except for maybe the Steelers. What do you guys think about the comments that came out about Ben Roethlisberger this last week, where they're like, oh, there's a lot of people that think he's washed up? Duh. We knew that 2 years ago. Why is that just coming out now? I'm not understanding. Brian, do you think that the Steelers, they're just going to be done this year and Big Ben will move on? Hopefully.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. This, like you say, it's almost rinse and repeat every year. It's like, oh, Big Ben's done, but I'm not sure how he's done because he's got such fantastic set of receivers, and it's almost like, well, I could maybe have a go there and do all right.
Right?
Probably not.
Yes, go sign him.
I think I really like the coach Mike Tomlin, and their defense has been great, and that's another maybe it's time for their defense to step up. But offensively going forward, the Steelers haven't looked, regardless of all their weapons, haven't looked great. And, is Big Ben past it? Probably. Have they been sort of, kicking the can on that for a few years yet? And I don't know. I think it's Dwayne Haskins they've got in reserve. Maybe have a chance on him. I don't know. But, they've certainly not looked, like the team they want to be. And, there's big questions there going forward.
Right. Yeah, it's a little surprising. I think that there's some teams here that will kind of shake it out. I think that probably the Seahawks, the Chiefs, and the Vikings probably will be just fine. The rest of the teams, the Falcons are a disaster. I don't even know what's going on there. The winless teams, we have the Jets, the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Lions. I don't think any of those are super surprising, but I want to say this. The Lions almost beat every team that they have played. They have looked so hot and cold sometimes, and they just come down to the last minute. Let me tell you, that Lions game last weekend, when the officials missed, the delay of game penalty, and then the Ravens won, I was hot. And I'm not a Lions fan, and I was livid, absolutely livid. It was crazy to me. We're going to talk about the Lions a little bit later here when we talk about Stafford and Goff. So don't want to talk about them too much, but I just think, I would be real pissed if I were a Lions game. So Lions fans. Okay. So let's move on to Chicago. Do you guys remember the preseason hype about Justin Fields and how he was going to be the savior of that team? And then Matt Nagy came in, just for a little background, people who maybe aren't following. Matt Nagy came in and said, we're going to let Andy Dalton start, and the fan base exploded. Well, this week they got what they wanted. Right? They got Justin Fields. I don't know they actually got what they really wanted out of Justin Fields. The rally cry that is coming out of Chicago is fire Matt Nagy. Liz, do you think that is smart, or do you think that everyone just needs to calm down for a minute and let the kid get his feet underneath of him?
I don't know, because I've seen a lot of commentary, and I've seen who it's come from. It's coming from players even. So me as like an outsider, as a fan, you'd have a certain opinion. But when I feel like it comes from the players, I feel like they know best. So if some of them are saying that, then say that's probably time for him to go.
Yeah, Brian, it's not like this is his first season, right? It's not like this is Nagy's first season. And we all understand that, it takes some time to settle in. But I think for me, it seems to be the constant indecision that they have surrounding the quarterback that makes me, I don't have any faith in Matt Nagy, and I could care less about the Bears.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone does anymore.
Right.
He's been circling the drain for a few years, hasn't he? And then you get Justin Fields, and it's all right. We've got this new chance at a bit of a restart, and they were awful on Sunday. I think less than 50 total yards, just rubbish. I think he was sacked 9 times, and you've just got to sort of, yes, obviously he's a rookie. They're not a great team. They're always going to struggle, but you've got to help the kid out. And it's almost like they've gone, right, we've got this Andy Dalton offense who's very, and I think he's all right, Andy Dalton, but he's on the way. He's on the downhill, shall we say.
Definitely halfway downhill.
Yeah. Sure. So he's not very mobile, a bit of a pocket pass. And then we've got this young, mobile quarterback. Let's just put him in this Andy Dalton offense and hope it works out for him. They didn't really seem to plan anything in for Justin Fields, and just sort of said, right, all the best.
Yeah.
I don't think
good luck, kid. Pat on the head.
Yeah, and I was thinking if you were going to just stick him in, that you might as well. They've got Nick Foles as well. Why don't you put him in if you're just going to play a classic quarterback scheme sort of thing?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I tried to watch some of the highlights today, but it was really painful.
Oh, it's so painful. And you bring up a good point. They do have. Nick is there. He has, lots of experience in the NFL. Remember, even in the offseason, we assumed that the Bears would probably get rid of him, right? Because they already had 2 quarterbacks, but they didn't. And once again, that's complete indecision, right? It's like, I better keep as many as I got. You know what I mean? But then this week, Matt Nagy comes out and he says, I don't know who's going to be our starting quarterback. And all 3 of them are in the running. What? That does nothing. And this is what happened to Tua in Miami last year when they put him in and then took him back out and then put him in and took him back out again as the starter. It completely undermines your young quarterbacks. So it's almost as if Matt Nagy knows that he might not have a job in November. Let's be real honest about that. And it might be that he is trying to figure out some way to save his job. Bears fans aren't having it. If it were you guys, and I want you both to answer this question, would you keep playing your veterans and hope for the best and let Justin Fields learn? So either one of the 2 of them, either Andy or Nick, or would you say, nope, we got to go all in on this kid and he's got to learn? Liz, what do you think?
So I'm always with you, you've got to go all in, because at the end of the day, someone's not going to learn how to play under pressure and all that kind of stuff unless they're in that real situation. So I'm very much in the case of just, let it be. It's going to be one of those things when this set happens, when a team gets so many players, you just almost got to ride that really crap wave of, right, we're not very good right now, but we're trying to get a solid relationship with our team, because I think that is where Browns is a really good example of that. It's taken them a little while, but they're starting to get there with a solid team now. So yeah, go all in, on the kid.
Brian, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm getting you close.
I'm kidding.
If you're going to put him in, you've got to help him out the way you'd help anyone out. I think. The bits of the game that I did saw, it didn't seem to attempt a long pass. He didn't, like I say, he didn't do any much moving in the pocket. It was all very, he looked lost. The whole team looked lost. And obviously, I don't think you're ever going to succeed there. If you look at, Sam Darnold at the Jets and what a mess that was, and he never really stood a chance. You don't want it to be that similar situation. So unless you're going to fix it for Justin Fields, I'd rather you play someone else so you don't, I guess, ruin him and give him a bit more time on the sidelines to learn that way. But I totally see what Liz is going, because you learn a lot playing. So I don't know, but I think it's time for Matt Nagy to go. That's the first thing.
That's the change that needs to happen. Yeah. I agree with you. And I agree with you too, Liz. The Our Turf Football, the site that I work for, Lisa, who is our Miami writer and one of our podcast hosts, she is all about, you draft a quarterback in the first round, you play him, come hell or high water, you throw him in. If you think he was worth a first round pick, you throw him in. And I don't really agree with that, because I always feel like that year that Patrick Mahomes got to sit behind Alex Smith was amazing for him. He probably learned so much. But I get when you're in this situation where you're like, go kid, good luck to you. I hope it works out. But you also don't want him to get injured, because then you have no idea if he'll come back the same player. Do you know what I mean? And then you kind of undermined the whole thing. So I get both sides of it, but I think I completely agree with Brian.
Yeah.
Matt Nagy's the one that's got to go. And then let the new coach decide what they're going to do. All right. So let's go quickly to Stafford and Goff. And then that's what I brought this up, because we were talking about, that both ends of the spectrum of teams. And it brought to my mind kind of the have and the have-nots. And there are a lot of them in the NFL. We look at the Jets, we look at the Giants, we look at, those teams that are really struggling, even the Jags, although, we know they're rebuilding for the 15th time now, but, we get that. We understand it's going to take a minute. And then you look at teams like the teams in the NFC West or the Chiefs that are the haves in the NFL. And what the Stafford Goff switch proves is what I've been saying my entire reporting career is it's about team, not the quarterback, right? And this proves it completely. Jared Goff had a certain level of success playing for the Rams. That is because he was well coached and the team was well put together. Matt Stafford played for the Lions. Good quarterback. I would never say he was elite, but he's a good quarterback who did not have the team that put around him. And now we've switched them. But what has happened? Stafford looks great. They're winning the same number of games they were winning with Goff. It's about the team. But Goff has actually elevated the Lions a little bit. We saw them, like I said, they haven't won a game, but they've been in every single game they play. Is that surprising to you guys? And what is your stance on if you have a quarterback you can win, or you have to have a solid, complete team, even with a mediocre quarterback? Where do you guys sit on that? The haves versus the have-nots. Brian, I'm going to start with you. I know it's a complicated question. And of course, I'm going to say, yes, every team is different, blah, we get that. But what's your general thought on it? Is it just a superstar quarterback that can rally the whole team, or do you have to have completeness, even if it's just average?
Well, firstly, on the Lions, I think I'm surprised, as everyone is. And like you say, they're a lot of fun to watch. Like the head coach said, they are trying to bite people's kneecaps off, whatever that means. They seem to be doing that. And yeah, they were so unlucky not to win that game the other day. I know. The delay of game, and then the kick itself, and the fact it bounced in, and it's like, oh, come on. You've got to feel sorry.
That black cloud just sits above the Lions.
But yeah, obviously Justin Tuck is outrageous. So, but yeah, I think it's hard not to plonk myself right on the fence and say I think you need a bit of both. You've seen quarterbacks come into, okay quarterbacks into good teams and do okay, and then you've seen the opposite where you've had good quarterbacks but they've not had support and they've struggled. I guess you could maybe go back to Seattle where you've got an elite quarterback there, and because they've not had a defense or an offensive line. I mean, he's got plenty of weapons now, but you can question some of the play calling and stuff. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks have struggled, so it is difficult, but it certainly seems. I think we'll see a lot more teams now taking a gamble on a quarterback. We've seen, well, so far so good for Stafford at the Rams, and obviously Tom Brady did pretty well last year. Shock horror at the Bucs. So you've seen teams do okay. With that, it's not working out too well for the Colts that have brought in Carson Wentz. They're up there, one of the 0-3 teams. They seem to be struggling. Obviously, you can question how good Carson Wentz was. Probably not too good. But so it is really difficult. But I certainly think you do need a good mix of both. Obviously, I think an elite quarterback can absolutely boost your team, but only for, I think, a certain amount of time. And then team seems to catch up and you struggle.
Liz, what do you think? Because I have a pretty strong opinion about this, to be really honest with you, but I want to hear your guys first.
So I've kind of got the opinion. So like anyone who listens to shows knows I've got like a slight crush on Matt Stafford. So I loved watching him when he was at the Lions, and I always felt so sad for the Lions and like how well I wanted them to do, but just they never seemed to quite, get there. When I heard about the swap, I guess I was really excited for Stafford. I think what's working for him is that he has got a good team around him. And that's no discredit to Lions, because there is some, good players that have been on his team throughout the years. But there's something about the connection with this one that seems to be working well. So I do think, I suppose it's not just it's good quarterback. It is, to me, it's about the connection. Without the connection, you can have a great quarterback, but it might not necessarily work. So, yeah, connect away.
I look at it this way. If you were to take Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay and stick him in Jacksonville, would they be winning?
No. Probably
not. Do you know what I mean? It's not, if you were to take, and so we took Matt Stafford, or they took Matt Stafford out of the Lions and put him on a near perfect team. Well, of course he's going to win. He's a good quarterback. I just don't know that he's the elite quarterback now everyone has decided he is. He's on a great team. Do you know what I mean? Where in turn, you took Teddy Bridgewater, who is a average quarterback. I really like Teddy Bridgewater. I'm heartbroken that injury really derailed his career, but he's just an average quarterback. They stuck him in Denver, which we're going to talk about these 3-0 teams here in just a minute. And he's killing it. Why? Because the team is really solid around him. And so that's where I really get into, and I get into arguments with people all the time who I think give quarterbacks way too much credit. I think that it is, you can take the Teddy Bridgewaters and stick them on a good team and they're going to play well. And you can take the Matt Staffords and put them on a perfect team and make them look elite. But it isn't all or nothing with just one. So I get really irritated when they say the quarterback put the team on their back. Well, yeah, you can do that for a couple games. You're not going to do that for a whole season. It just doesn't work out that way. So congratulations, Matt Stafford. I'm very glad that you're doing well, sort of. But I want to say a little congratulations to Jared Goff, who I have given a lot of flack to over the years, because I think that he's holding his own. Even though they're not winning, there's been a lot of fun to watch. So that's just my very snarky there. But all right, so I have issues with the Rams. Okay, so let's talk about these 3-0 teams. It'll be a lot more fun. All right, so we have the Panthers, the Rams, the Cardinals, the Raiders, and the Broncos. Some of those teams are not like the others. I'm just saying at all. So you look at these 5 teams, and there's a couple that stick out that are pretty strong, and then there's a couple that are surprising. Of the 5, you guys, who is the most surprising team to you guys being 3-0? Panthers, Rams, Cardinals, Raiders, or Broncos? Liz, I'm going to start with you this time.
So for me, I think the Raiders are the biggest surprise. I'm not necessarily sure why that kind of is. I don't know if that's because I've discounted them in the past. Not for any particular reason, just they're not a team that I think I've paid a lot of attention to, or that have kind of had that, I don't know what the word is, but that reason to watch them. Whereas obviously they're 3-0, so clearly I should be watching them. So that's why they're the biggest surprise to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brian, what about you?
I'd probably go for the Panthers, just because they weren't very good last season. You think, you bring in Sam Darnold, mentioned him before. Again, is he a bad quarterback, a good quarterback? It's really hard to know. A better team, but yeah, they beat the Jets and the Texans. They're sort of semi-free hits if you can get them in the NFL. But then they beat the Saints as well, and they're a bit up and down. But you can only beat who's in front of you. Similar to the Broncos, they've had a pretty easy run so far. But yeah, I didn't really see any of them 3 teams we mentioned so far being 3-0. But yeah, especially not the Panthers. But we'll see. They play my Cowboys next weekend, so that'll be the end of that.
We'll say. Well, it's a really good point. But and it's, you can look at it 2 ways. So the Raiders, they've gone to 2 overtimes in 3 games. So obviously they're fighting to the finish, which is impressive, right? They fight to the end, but it takes some extra minutes to win. So there is definitely some question marks about the Raiders, although they are playing much better than I expected them to. I expect them to just be bottom of the barrel this year. So kudos to them for doing better. But if you look at really the Broncos and the Panthers, they are beating teams they should beat, right? And so we can't really take that away from them because they're doing what they're supposed to do. They just happen to get these teams at the beginning of the season. And so it makes you wonder, kind of like the Steelers of last year who went 11-0 and then petered out the minute they hit the playoffs. It's like you have to kind of watch the schedule and see how that rolls just a little bit. I don't think anyone is surprised at the 2 NFC West teams that are there. Maybe the Cardinals. Not everyone was as high on the Cardinals as they were definitely on the Rams. But the other 3, it definitely are a little surprised. But at the same time, they're beating teams they should beat. So that is impressive. I will say, I wrote an article in the offseason, though, that we needed to pay a little more attention to the Broncos because they've been dismissed for so many years, basically since Peyton Manning left, right? And now this year, they seem to have put it together. Unfortunately, they had some injuries in this last game, which could derail that pretty quickly. But I think that the Broncos are probably the ones that I'm happiest about for them, that they're doing so well. So it's been pretty interesting. We'll see if they can keep it up. All right, Liz. You are having a party, my friend.
I am indeed. So for anyone who's listening that's going to be in London, the first London NFL game. So Saturday, I want to say the 10th, but I no longer know what day is. What day is the Saturday? The 9th? The game's the 10th.
9th.
Saturday
it's
9th.
the 9th, yeah.
So Saturday 9th, I'm having a get-together at Sports Bar and Grill, Marylebone. Can never pronounce that, whether it's Marylebone. So I'm pronouncing how you see it spelled.
You're asking the American. I have no idea.
So yeah, for anyone who's in London around that evening, starting from like 7 o'clock, we'll be there. We're gonna have the college football on for anyone who's up for that, and yeah, it's gonna be a good night. Oh, and if you want to, by the way, they're at NFL UK fanmeetup.com.
Yeah, we will put the link on our Twitter account for sure. And I will be there, and Shona will be there, so the whole gang will be there. And so you guys can come and chat with us. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm really excited. I had a great time at the one I went to a few years ago. It was so nice to sit there and just talk football for hours. And it was like my friends that I brought along were a little bored, but I told them they didn't have to come this time. So this time I'll have all the time I can do. I was like, it'll be a lot of fun. So I really hope you join us. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I_am_Beej, BWJ. That's like a childish nickname I've got. You'll get all sorts of crap from me on there, but yeah, check it out. And also write for 99 Yards with Liz. So a bit of stuff on there too.
Love it. I love it. And we appreciate you filling in on such short notice so that Shona could go work on her stuff for school. We're still so proud of her going back to school to be a nurse. I'm so excited. So, all right, everyone, we will be back again in,
2 weeks?
We'll be back again in a week or two. It depends because I will still be in London next time we're supposed to be there. So we will figure that out. And we hope you join us again. Thanks for watching.